Part people, we got a good episode for you today. We got Jesse Morse, MD, joining us. We're going to talk about the Fernando Tatis Jr. news with his shoulder. It is non-throwing shoulder, which is good news for Padres fans. And supposedly it is a partial tear of the labrum. We'll see if that actually is good news. Talking to Jesse next, and we'll talk more injuries about Eloy Jimenez, Kirby Yates, Trevor Rosenthal. Also, that news coming down. So, Will Middlebrooks, Danny Vieti, Jesse Morse coming up next. We're joined now by Dr. Jesse Morse, MD, sports medicine and regenerative medicine at the, I'm going to mess this up because I'm not a medical guy, at the Osteopathic Center?
Osteopathic Center, yep.
My fiance is a nurse.
Reading's hard, Danny. I get it, man.
My fiance is a nurse. I'm going to get beat tonight for sure. But thank you for joining us. There's been a lot of news, obviously, going around Major League Baseball. It's not that funny. It's really not that funny. Going around Major League Baseball with Fernando Tatis Jr. going down, of course. Eloy Jimenez before the season went down with his pectoral. And then the news of Trevor Rosenthal. Of course, he's getting a second opinion for thoracic outlet syndrome. I want to start with FTJ, of course, over there on the West Coast. Him going down obviously makes a huge impact on Major League Baseball. What's the impact on Fernando Tatis Jr. himself? What should fans look for his shoulder issue, and when, timetable wise, recovery wise?
So this is a little bit of a controversial injury. Initially, when he did it, it looked like he was grabbing his arm kind of like this, but that's almost a red herring in that it was actually his shoulder. He was just trying to be comfortable. And essentially what he did was he had been dealing with a very loose shoulder that where even in spring training, reportedly it had popped out a couple weeks ago. We don't hear about some of these things, but and it calmed down. But essentially the shoulder is a ball and socket. So if the labrum, which is the cartilage part that holds the ball in the socket, if it's too loose, at a powerful swing, you can pop that ball out of the socket. Now, if you tear it, you tear the labrum, then it's a lot easier. So that's essentially what he did. The force of the swing was enough to tear the labrum, usually towards the front, which then causes the ball, the arm to pop out of your socket. The problem is the labrum doesn't tear. It doesn't heal. It just continues to tear slowly. So the MRI said slight tear. I don't know if I believe it, but no fracture, which sometimes can happen, and no rotator cuff injury, which is kind of the rest there. So my suspicion is they're going to get a second opinion. They might go to either HSS, which is in New York, or the Curl and Job group out in LA, which are both big, big name ortho practices, and just reevaluate him. He's owed a lot of money. He's still really young. And this, if they don't treat it right, could potentially derail his career because that labrum is only going to get worse. He could have worsening of other injuries within the shoulder. This is essentially what happened to Conforto a couple of years ago, if you remember that. And unfortunately, you can put a steroid shot in there. That's not really going to do anything for structurally. It may calm down some of the swelling, but you have to restabilize that shoulder to prevent it from popping out again. And if you don't do that, the next swing, the next fluky play, whatever it is, going to pop out again. And every time you're going to potentially tear that labrum more and more. So realistically, he needs surgery. It's just a matter of when. Did they wait until mid-season? Did they wait until he really tears it? It's slippery slope. There's no easy solution here.
It seems like, and obviously I'm not AJ Preller, so I'm not going to speak for him, but it almost seems like, hey, this is you are young. We have you for a long time. This is going to be a really good chance for us to win this year. Do you think you can just kind of deal with it? But now I'm thinking, if it's reoccurring, which I've played with teammates, which it is reoccurring when they have this issue because they're not able to fully tighten everything back up in there. Does it affect his stats, affect his mental game? Now he's dealing with the media. It's a snowball effect that could be avoided if they could just get it fixed. And do you think this is maybe like a hypermobile type thing? Like he's just a super stretchy, elastic type guy? Or do you think it came from an injury?
A combination of both. He probably is a little bit more mobile, and then he somehow tweaked it So the data shows if you dislocate your shoulder before the age of 18, there's about a 90% chance of dislocating it again. But as you get older, it gets less and less. My suspicion is he probably dislocated it, subluxed it at some point in the past. They calmed it down with PT, re-strengthened it, but unfortunately, given the violent nature of his swinging and just what he does, it's just going to continue to loosen until something like this unfortunately happens. So it's unfortunate because he's such an awesome player to watch, and now you don't know if you do watch him, is he going to be mentally afraid of swinging hard? Is he going to play the same way he's going to play? Is it going to pop out and then you just like, so it's like, it's unfortunate.
We can't, sorry, Danny, there's one more thing. Like we almost lost, I mean, we still might lose Tatis for the whole season. We don't really know yet. Did you see the Ohtani play at home plate? That was so close. If that cleat catches or gets trapped under Abreu, he ends up like my leg.
Yep.
It was so close, bro. That would have been a very similar injury in action to what happened to my ankle and my leg.
Yeah.
I almost threw up watching it because I was like, that was so close.
After the crazy game that he's had, I mean, between throwing as hard as he throws and then hitting as hard, you're like, and I mean, he literally, if he was planted, there could have been a lot of that. I mean, Abreu's a big boy.
He is. He's 250.
Not exactly a small guy.
Yeah, that's crazy. So
we're lucky. We're lucky that I think he pinched it yesterday or today. I think he hit a home run.
He had 2 knocks today.
But either way, we got lucky with Ohtani. With that, they don't always work out that way, obviously, unfortunately.
No.
Well, with FTJ, I think the biggest question, and I don't know if you have the answer, if anybody has the answer. Can he play with this injury to the best of his ability? And secondly, should he play?
If he was my patient, and I see a lot of pros, usually NFL guys, and I would tell them, it depends on what you're trying to do. You, as a very high level athlete in your early 20s with hopefully a long career ahead of you, it's probably in your best interest to get this fixed because it's only going to slowly get worse. And what happens if you fully tear a rotator cuff? What happens if you happen to get what we call a Bankart lesion, which is or a bony Bankart, where you basically fracture off a piece of the bone as it comes out of the socket? Every time, I mean, you can only strengthen up this shoulder so much with a labral tear. I specialize in regenerative medicine, which is basically injecting stem cells and that type of stuff. But with the amount of force that these guys use, I would even recommend surgery for him. But, it's a tough decision. There's no easy decision here. I know the team wants to win, but you should be thinking about, potentially how much money you owe him, but also how much the future. This should be your franchise player. I understand, you're going to lose him potentially for the whole year because that's basically what it would be. But what if you tear up his shoulder so much that you lose him for 4 or 5 years, or he's never the same player? Like that's what they need to talk with the second or third surgeon about.
Just to be clear, the labrum surgery would be about 9 to 12 month recovery. Is that correct?
Best case scenario, 6 months. 4 months is not realistic for this type of injury, this type of player. 6 months is realistic. Up to 9 months, depending on the severity, can be 12 months. I mean,
Yeah, I had tons of labrum issues. I just had 2 like scope clean outs, but I also had a ton of shots, cortisone. I had stem cell done, and stem cell actually didn't do a whole lot for me. I think it was to the point, this was after years and years of it. Mm-hmm. It was just broken down and nasty at that point. So that was 10 years after my first tear that I got stem cell. So
yeah, I mean,
there you go. Like do it. If I wish I had done this stuff early, but stem cell wasn't really, in 2007 wasn't really that big of a deal. PRP was just coming out.
Past 10 years and really past 5 years, it's really taken a turn. But for labrums, we've got some data, but it's not
enough blood supply in there, right?
No, it's a combination between blood supply and just the sheer force of what you're asking your body to do,
right?
Over and over and over again, with the amount of power, with the amount of swings, and you can only tighten up that joint so much without it popping out again, because that's essentially what the labrum is supposed to do. And think of the labrum as a clock. So say right now, maybe the clock is only torn from 3 to 4. Well, what if he goes back and he tears it from 3 to 6, or 12 to 6? That's a bigger injury. So it's unfortunate.
Yeah. What about? Tell us a little bit more about Trevor Rosenthal and what he's dealing with. We've heard this for years. This has been a recurring injury, especially with pitchers. Thoracic outlet syndrome. What exactly does it mean medically and anatomically? Because fans hear it, and we know it's some type of arm issue, but what does it actually mean medically?
This is not something you want to hear for anybody, especially. So thoracic outlet syndrome essentially usually correlates with an injury in the upper shoulder area, where either a nerve or a blood vessel gets pinched underneath the rib or underneath muscles and causes the nerve to not really be able to fire appropriately. So you're not feeling the pitch. You're not feeling the ball like you want to. So if you're trying to throw it like this, but you can't get the grip on it. So the first name that comes to mind is Matt Harvey.
Yeah.
And we saw him actually pitch against the Red Sox today and looked pretty good, but I felt like his career got derailed because of that injury. He was never the same pitcher that he should have been, or at least we hoped he had been, because of that. So there's a couple ways to address it. It really depends on what the cause is, the severity of it. If there's a blood vessel or a nerve stuck in between two muscles, or if it's underneath the first rib, which is basically right here.
They go in and take out a piece of that rib, don't they?
Yeah, sometimes they can notch out a piece of the rib. It's weird. It's a weird. It usually doesn't happen like in normal people. It's just like a baseball, basically, because they're repetitive over and over and over again, and it just, the muscles on that side have a tendency to get larger, and basically it's a space issue. The nerve or blood vessel or a blood vessel gets compressed in between the bone on top and the muscle underneath, or just depending on how it's structured, how it's affecting that person.
It's scary.
Good. Let's we want to ask about Eloy as well. I
got another one too. I'm picking your brain right now, and I'm enjoying every second of it. But go ahead, Brooksy, about
yeah, Eloy. Torn pec. You don't really see this much in baseball. This is more of a football injury.
This is a football injury.
Or like world's strongest man.
Yeah. This is a football injury. This is a bench press, doing way too heavy bench press, or a barbell falls off, like the weight falls off the barbell bench press. So the only reason this happened was because his arm was over the fence, and that was the rate limiting factor. He was basically so the fence was here, and he was holding himself up, and the pec actually inserts onto the arm up here. So that was essentially the thing that gave way. Initially, I thought it was a shoulder dislocation, because you could see his scapula, his shoulder blade pop backwards. But that's because the pec, and that was what was, that pec is really strong. That's very hard to do. And this is a big boy. So I'm like, yeah, that's best case scenario, 5 months, probably closer to 6, which basically puts him at the end of the season.
So that's like a full rupture then.
Oh, yeah.
So they had to go in and fully connect that back to his arm.
His bruising, I bet he's got bruising like everywhere.
Oh.
Yeah.
How hard is it to throw a baseball after that?
Muscles there.
Was that his left arm or right arm?
Sorry.
No. How hard is it to throw a baseball after something like that?
You can, once you tighten it up, they're good. It's just you have to basically put it back together.
Mm-hmm.
It's his lead. I want to say it's his lead arm and his. I don't think it's
his left arm, isn't it?
Yeah, I want to say it's his left arm. I'm trying to remember the image.
Yeah.
So I think he's righty on both sides.
It's going to be more like the hitting, like the finish of his swing.
Yeah.
It's going to be getting that mobility back. That's going to be tough.
And he's going to have some scar tissue in there inevitably, eventually. But fluky injury, definitely a fluky injury.
I don't know if I've ever heard of that in baseball.
Like the offensive line that are going like this all the time. That's what you see there. You don't see it in baseball.
No.
I have one more before we let you go, because I could keep you here all night. Kirby Yates, Obviously, he had his physical. There were concerns reportedly about him possibly having deeper arm issues. What are these physicals when people are in free agency and these physicals that these players take? How in depth are the physicals, and should teams take more caution when it comes to these physicals? Because Kirby Yates signs a 1-year deal with Toronto. Now he's not even going to pitch for him at all.
So I actually have very in-depth knowledge in general of physicals. From my fellowship, I actually covered the Blue Jays and the Phillies. That's how I know about Will's ankle. My fellowship boss, who I met 2 weeks ago, is the team doc of the Blue Jays. So I don't know I have any details because we don't talk about that, but here's the gist of it. Every team's a little different. Usually around February 14th-ish, every year's a little different. They bring in pitchers and catchers first, and then some of the big name guys usually come a little earlier if they want to. They do full physicals. Physical therapists will come in and do full range of motion. They're measured. Every team's a little different, so they all do it, have a different level of crazy. We do EKGs. Some of them even do echoes, ultrasound of the heart. They'll do strength testing, grip testing, measurement. Like, they do everything. But you really don't get imaging unless you have a concern. It's like everybody is going to have something. It just depends on how bad it is and does it affect them. So, I mean, if there were some red flags or he had pain, then you send him for imaging. But if he didn't have it, most of these guys would probably be tossing a little bit, but really haven't ramped up. Once they ramp up, that's when you start to see the writing on the wall.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
This was great. I really, really enjoyed this. We talk about baseball all the time. We don't really talk about the medical side of it. So, we can't thank you enough, Jesse. Dr. Jesse Morse joining us on the WAKE and RAKE podcast.
So if you guys are interested, I actually do a daily injury report that is like a Google sheet, basically, on thefantasydoctors.com. It's like on the top right-hand corner. You just click it and it will pull up. I try to do it every day. Sometimes it's hard between all the sports. But that will kind of keep you updated, and I actually write that, so it's my words. So that you'll see kind of an idea of expectations and stuff, because the list gets crazy. I mean, it gets ridiculous. And there's a lot of moving parts. This guy sprained his knee. This guy got hit in the face with a pitch. JD Davis just got hit in the fifth. Did he break his hand? Like, there's so many questions. So that's one of the things that I do. And then a big name injury, I usually try to cover it with video. Sometimes I can, sometimes I can't.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, if we're lucky enough, we'd love to have you back. I know there
Yeah.
will be, unfortunately, more injuries, probably to big names. And I'm glad we have somebody we can lean on that knows what the heck they're talking about.
I'm happy to help.
First of all, we need to bring Jesse back on here a whole lot more, because that was incredibly informative.
awesome.
I've never felt so uneducated before in my entire life, but here we are. And let me ask you this, because you know the perspective of the player. You've been through a free agency process. You've had injuries.
Yeah.
What my biggest takeaway was when I asked him about Kirby Yates, and he talked about the physical. What exactly did they check? He said, if they find something concerning, they send them to imaging.
Yeah.
It doesn't sound like they sent Kirby Yates to imaging, or if they did, they didn't see anything in that imaging.
Exactly.
So our team, let me ask you this. Sorry, before I cut you off, but are teams not being diligent enough in their physicals, or are these players trying to hide some injuries because they want to get a contract?
Neither. I think, we know he missed all last year because his elbow was hurting. He had a sore elbow. He had a strain. There's plenty of imaging done, I guarantee, and there was no tear or sign of it going to tear. You can't really predict those things unless there's a small tear in which we would know about. I don't think there's any shady activity here. I think the team did a thorough physical, and they're not going to spend that money for nothing. Number one, that doesn't happen.
Right.
So I guarantee that he went through the physical, all his strength tests, all that was fine, because he's been rehabbing it since the beginning of last year. So he's probably really strong and felt good. He probably hadn't ramped up his throwing to that point. So he was probably just getting back into throwing because of all the rehab. I guarantee they did imaging. I'm guaranteed they did an MRI to check out all the ligaments, make sure everything looked good before that signing. You don't sign someone in free agency after they've been hurt all year and not go that deep into it.
That's why I'm so confused.
So what I'm saying, I think he hurt himself when he started throwing. And I think that's realistic. It happens. I mean, he clearly had an issue. Did he change his mechanics? Is he compensating for pain? Maybe. And over time, maybe that's why he tore it. I don't know the recipe, but I don't think it was because, number one, a player can't lie about that and get away with it.
You wouldn't think.
And number two, the team is definitely doing imaging and digging as deep as they can to find out before they write that check.
That's insightful, because as a fan, seeing Kirby Yates going down after having an arm injury,
Sucks.
It's a little like, did you guys not do your job on the medical aspect of this?
Yeah.
Like, how would you sign a guy?
I hear you, man.
So that's helpful.
It looks bad, but I guarantee. I mean, these teams are very thorough in which they do physicals, and especially with guys who have a history of being hurt.
FTJ.
Yeah.
What's that gonna do to this Padres season? I mean, are they still contenders?
Absolutely, they are.
Jesse just said he needs surgery.
He does, and I hope they do the right thing. And I'm hoping AJ Preller isn't taking advantage of him because he's on a long contract. He's young and thinking we're going to get whatever we can get out of him this year, even if it's lower average, lower power. If this happens again, just because we want to get whatever we can out of him so we can win more games this year. I don't think that would be a responsible decision. Same time, I'm not a doctor. I'm not a GM. So I obviously can't make the call on that or if they're right or wrong.
What would you do? Would you play?
As a player, especially at that age, of course you want to play.
Yeah.
No one wants to be told, hey, you have a choice here. You can get surgery and be out 4 to 6 months, probably miss the rest of the year, maybe get back in time for the postseason if we make it. No player wants to hear that, especially your star player. Especially a guy like Tatis who wants to be on the field every day. But older me, looking back, would definitely say fix it now. And obviously I was never in his shoes where I was going to be on a contract that long. But fix it now, and then you don't have to deal with this anymore. It's going to reoccur. It's going to get worse, just like Jesse just told us. Your stats are going to probably suffer with it. You're gonna have to deal with the media and the whole baseball world because you signed for all this money. It's a huge snowball effect that I feel like the Padres need to avoid.
It's
for his the mental side of the game for him, and then physically going forward for the rest of his career.
Pushing off the surgery would be delaying the inevitable, essentially.
That's what I initially thought, and Jesse confirmed it.
And you don't want to ask a player like that. You invest that much money in. They're already asking a lot of a 22-year-old kid.
Of course.
They're asking him to be their leader on the team. And now if he doesn't have this surgery, now you're going to ask him to play at 75%, maybe. If that.
Lucky. Yeah. I mean, the good thing is for the Padres as a team, without him, let's say he gets surgery and misses the season.
Mm-hmm.
They're still the second best team in the NL West. They're still a wild card team. They still have really good pitching. They still have a couple Cy Young candidates on their team. 3 if Lamet's healthy and on his game. Their lineup is deep, dude. Like Tommy Pham, Hosmer. Hosmer's NL Player of the Week.
Mm.
He had a cool 538 the first week of the season. It's a joke, man. Like Will Myers. I mean, yeah, like they have guys to fill in. Ha-Seong Kim, they got from Korea. I don't know if I pronounced that right. I think I did.
Yeah.
Ha-Seong
Kim. Yeah.
Ha-Seong Kim. That was pretty good.
That's a good one.
Jurickson Profar, he's a Swiss Army knife. You can plug him anywhere, but he's also a really serviceable shortstop as well. Play with him in Texas, play with him in AAA with Texas and in the big leagues. Good infielder, good outfielder. He's a switch hitter, so that helps you build your lineup around that too. So they're going to be fine. And they have pitching. Pitching's where you win games.
Yeah, they're hurting. I mean, across the diamond, Austin Nola, their starting catcher, he's out. Trent Grisham.
He's coming back.
Yeah. But Dinelson Lamet, he threw 1 inning in spring training.
I think he'll be back. I don't know. I haven't looked at his progression, but they're
I
going to be
agree.
okay.
They're still
But
competitive.
look, you got to look at the way the division is built and who they're going to play a majority of their games against. They're also going to be playing against the AL West, so they're going to play the Rangers. They're going to play the Mariners. So there will be some games in there to help them get through this, and their division's weak. The Giants aren't great; they're competitive, but they're still a better team than them.
Okay.
And go ahead.
I apologize. We've been cutting each other off.
No, you don't. You don't apologize.
All day today. Hold on, I just bumped my light. I got a light, by the way. Let me ask you this. Staying on the FTJ conversation.
Mm-hmm.
I got asked this. I went on the San Diego radio station today and they asked me the same question. I didn't quite know how to answer. Was it premature to hand a 22-year-old kid who hasn't played 162 games a 14-year contract, $340 million? Was it premature to give him that when he has had injury issues before? His rookie season, he had back issues.
Nope.
No.
I stand by it. I think he's still going to end up being one of the best players in the game. There's just like they got to get past. I think when he's healthy, which he will be, he's still young. He had a rough patch. This has been bothering him for a bit now. That's another reason you should just fix it and put it in the rearview mirror. No, he's still one of the most exciting electric players in baseball. It's easy to look now and be like, oh, he's hurt. Why'd you pay him?
Mm-hmm.
But let's say he didn't get hurt and he hits 340 with 35 and 110 this year. And then they're like, shit, now we got to pay him $400 million. So I think they made the right play. I think everything about him projects out to be one of the best players in the game, one of the faces of baseball. So I think they made the right play. He's still young. It's very early in his career. He's going to have so many years. We're not even close to his prime. All right. We have so much time for him. He could sit out the next 3 years, come back and still be good for the rest of that.
Yeah.
That's how long it is. And that's how good he will be. He's young. He's still growing into his body. He's going to figure this out. He's going to figure out what program works for his body. He's not even to that point in his career yet where you go, oh, this is what works for me. This doesn't work for me. He's still figuring that out. Most kids are still in the minor leagues at his age or in college.
And a 14-year contract, you're bound to have a season ender at some point. Might as well have it early.
Get out of the way, but like fix it now instead of let him grind through having a crappy season because he hurts. And then he has to miss next year because you decide in the off season to fix it.
Would you move him over to second base? This
no.
My head.
Are you drunk?
He had 5 errors opening weekend.
Shut up. Who cares?
It's just a question. I'm not saying I would put him at second base.
When I say shut up, I mean it with all due respect, but shut up. You don't ever move him to second base. You let him play shortstop as long as he can. He had a bad stretch.
But no. I'm not saying switch positions because he isn't physically capable. Well, I am saying that. With this injury, is he physically capable of manning shortstop? That's what I'm thinking.
Well, it's not his throwing arm.
Not his throwing arm, which is huge.
So you don't need to move him closer to first base. He clanked some balls. He clanked a couple balls. 2 of them, they were in a shift, and he's playing in on the grass, and a lefty smoked 2 balls at him. Those are tough. It's slicing from you, and you're way closer than you're accustomed to being. I played in that position because when we shifted, our shortstop moved over, and I stayed at shortstop on the grass in case a lefty bunted, and then 2 strikes, I would move back. They're leaving their shortstop there because that's their athlete. They want them at shortstop. I guess they're saying I was an athlete. No big deal. Yeah. So, but anyways, 2 of those were smoked, tough errors. I rewatched those. And the third one, that there were 2 that were real errors. The 2 where he was in close on the grass, but the lefty smoked at him when they were shifted. Those are tough balls. The ball doesn't even get to the dirt. It snakes on the grass. I'm making excuses for him, but these are real excuses. The other one was when they went to turn a double play and he should have put it in his pocket and he spiked the ball to first and the pitcher didn't scoop it because he's a pitcher, not a first baseman. Eric Hosmer catches that ball, but he's not there covering. And then that runner didn't even go to second, but there's a runner on third. He moved up on the ball past the pitcher, the bad throw. And that's why the error came in play. So 3 of those, I feel like those 2 to short, if he's playing at normal depth, that those are outs.
I have nightmares already. I could already
move him to second base.
It was a question. You chill. I got nightmares. Nightmares already.
Of you being drunk. This is liquid gold. All right. Weller Special Reserve. This is one of my favorite whiskeys. Weller. So there's a story behind this.
Okay.
Weller is made at Buffalo Trace Distillery. The story behind Weller. Have you heard of Pappy Van Winkle?
No.
It is a very, very expensive old whiskey.
Well, then that's why I haven't heard of it.
Also made by Buffalo Trace Distillery, which is their highest whiskey they make, most expensive.
You are rich and you are old, so you have heard of it.
I'm definitely not rich and I'm definitely not old. I'll kick your ass right now. I don't care if you're 6'6". So you're killing my whiskey story right now, by the way. Just straight Buzz Killington. So Weller, back to the story. Supposedly, Pappy only wanted to sell X amount of bottles of Pappy so the price could stay high and it would still be rare. So they took the extra barrels of Pappy and made Weller with it. So really, this is the good shit. Supposedly. Now, I've had Pappy. I have an empty bottle up there because why would you have a full bottle of it if it's that good? Enjoy it, right?
Who needs a full breakdown? You could just say, this is the good shit. That's all you need to know.
So that's just a cool story that's way cheaper than that.
Mm-hmm.
The price is going up on it now because people are starting to, get the secret. And I just told all of our 150 Twitter followers about it. Hey, in a week, we're growing.
Started from the bottom. Now we still here.
So, like I said, this is one of my favorites. So I'm gonna rank it. This is definitely in the 9s. Definitely, I'll go with 9.5 on my Weller. They make one. I'll go 9.2 on Weller Special Reserve. They make a Weller 12-year that is a little bit better in my eyes. It's just really hard to find. It's super rare right now. That's a 9.5 right there.
Okay, pardon my alcohol naivety. I'm still young. I'm still testing the waters here, except it's not water.
It's only been legal for 3 years?
4. I'm 20. Oh yeah, 3 years. I'm 24. Yeah.
Jesus, dude.
Does age really make that big of a difference when it comes to?
I don't know why. I mean,
fine
you call me
wines.
old all the time.
Yeah, I'm going straight to the source here.
All right, good. Get your point. Oh, by the way, I almost wore this tonight for the pod, but I thought it was a little far.
That's awesome. Those jerseys were sweet too.
Isn't that
Sunday jersey? I loved it.
With the camo in it?
Mm-hmm.
Had to knock the dust off that thing.
Padres had the best uniforms in baseball.
I love the camo. I got the other one right here.
Yeah.
Their camo is a little different now, but remember when they had the blue camo, the navy blue camo? I didn't like that.
I love that they went brown and yellow.
Oh, it's sick. It's old school. It's like their old school stuff.
Yeah. Reminds me of Tony Gwynn.
What were you going to ask me about alcohol?
What does age make that big of a difference?
It does. It does taste different.
Fine wines and whiskeys and bourbon.
Yeah.
Really,
you can tell a difference.
Is that right?
It's much smoother. For bourbons, it tends to be sweeter, stronger. Older you get, the stronger you need. Trust me, I had 2 kids, man. I want it as strong as I can get. And I got to deal with you multiple times a week now.
I'm making you into a better man.
Hey, I have 2 daughters. I didn't know I was going to have a son, and here you are.
Hey, we'll talk more baseball later this week. We got plenty of wake and rake for everybody. Special thanks to you.
Who knows what's going to happen next? This has been a crazy first week of baseball.
It's been a dark episode. Let's do less injury episodes. Let's hope for less injury episodes.
Hey, Nate, or what's his name? Lowe?
Yeah.
Is it Nate Lowe?
Nate Lau, yeah, Nate Lowe.
No, it's Lowe. Brandon Lau is what you're thinking. Nate Lowe. They were both with the Rays. Well, one of them still is.
Your brother?
He has 14 ribbies already.
Your brothers? No. Yes.
Yes.
Man.
Stop it.
If you don't get that right, we can't be friends.
All right.
14
Anyways, yes, more baseball coming soon. We'll see you guys soon.